Today on the Video Maker podcast, Chris and I talked to Justin Odisho. Justin is a YouTuber who makes tutorial videos about Photoshop and Premiere and After Effects. His channel is quite successful. I think he's at, what do I got here? 831,000 subscribers. He knows a little thing or two about editing. And also about running a YouTube channel. Actually, quite a bit of what we talk about is, the art of editing and storytelling, as well as, what it's like to run a YouTube channel that covers a divergent amount of topics. And basically, he does all these tutorial videos, as I mentioned, but he also has like a number of videos about things like philosophy and book reviews, which is a really interesting combination. Sometimes there's overlap, sometimes there's not, but Justin has figured out a way to make this work on a single channel, which a lot of people try and most fail at, and Justin has figured out a way to succeed there. So really interesting conversation with Justin today. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, we'd love it if you went to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts and hit the subscribe button. It'll deliver the podcast straight to your mobile device every Monday morning. Super convenient way to listen. So let's get on with it. Welcome to the Video Maker Podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and with me, as always, is Chris Monlux.
Hello.
And today, our guest is Justin Odisho. Justin, how's it going?
Good, thanks, Mike and Chris.
So, Justin, typically how we start these things off is, we'll just ask you, how did you get started in video and film? When did you get started? What got you into video, and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. So, yeah, I'm probably of the newer generation of video editing. I definitely was never around cutting actual physical clips and films. I got into it when I was like 16-ish, and I was playing a lot of video games, and you'd be hanging out on these websites online and these forums, and they would always have a graphics section or a kind of a creative section of these websites. And my older brother had downloaded like Sony Vegas and After Effects and all these programs. So I started using them and just got familiar with Photoshop and creating videos. So I was editing like video game stuff and digital stuff, which is funny because that's really popular still now. But yeah, that's how I got into using all these softwares. And so it's kind of detached from the film side of things. Traditionally, it's like much more digital video editing.
So our listeners may know you from your YouTube channel, where you do all kinds of tutorials for Photoshop and After Effects and Premiere and the like. So it sounds like when you got started, it was like basically straight into post-production. Did you do much work outside of post? I mean, gaming videos obviously have they often have the face cam, but other than that, did you do much classic production?
So yeah, that's very true. Like I actually don't consider myself like classically production trained in it. I am much more of like a post-production expert, because a lot of people always ask me questions that always creep into the territory of like directing and this and that. I think because you see someone who does videos and all these fields kind of blend together now. But I try to be clear that I actually am not a director. Like, I've made videos, and since then I've shot videos, and I do a little bit of everything. But what I am an expert at is the post-production side, the software side of things. But, doing that, you have to eventually understand how exposure works, how the camera works, aperture, ISO, all these terms, you do have to learn them.
I find it interesting because, I don't even think we have to go that far back where everybody was a specialist in film and video, right? And so everybody just had their category and their lane. And then as all the technology has gotten better and easier to use, more expectations of like, well, I could shoot too. And then you start doing that. And it is great. I mean, you shoot, you learn how to edit while you shoot sometimes because you can learn from, editing your shooting by going, I'm going to shoot better next time because I had to edit that. But it's interesting the way, you're lucky to get to stay in your lane. You can be really good at one thing, or you could be, kind of great at a bunch of things. I think sometimes that specialty really allows you to focus on lifting up that craft as your main focus rather than everything together. I know for me, whenever I finish a project or whatever, I'm thinking about how my edit could get better, how my shooting could get better, how my writing could get better, all those things. And sure, it'd be great to spend that same amount of time just on one aspect of that. And I think it's just it's so typical to have that expectation now. Like even I worked at a TV station, and they're sending reporters out with no no photog, they're shooting their own stuff, and you could tell. And I think there's a lot to be said about the quality that you can get when you have a specific job to do, and just to make sure that's excellent versus I gotta keep my foot over here and I'm patting my head and rub my tummy and I'm answering the phone and all the things together that you might have to do to be that one man band type of idea, which I get kind of worn out. Sometimes it is like I can just barely keep this all going, and I just hope that the balls don't drop while I'm trying to juggle. But it is definitely that single lane allows you to really focus on getting better in that very specific lane.
Yeah, and I think there's so many different lanes that we don't realize. Like, I'm not a lighting expert. Like, lighting itself is like such a art and a science, and I won't even pretend to be good at it. Like, I can get a video going and do it, but since I do have the YouTube channel, I think nowadays that everything has gotten so less expensive. So, our phone camera is very capable. You can be a one-man band, and I think that's good. Like, I don't think anything's wrong with that. But do understand that each thing does take a lot of study and practice. Like, it's not just like shooting video, you're going to be good at everything. Like, it takes a while to understand lighting. It takes a while to understand color grading. It takes a while to understand Premiere and After Effects and Photoshop. So sometimes, like specializing in on one part can help.
So, well, and there's more than just understanding it, right? Like, I understand lighting really well, but I wouldn't ever be able to compete with someone that is a lighting expert. There's just all the little minutia that makes all the difference. And I think that, like, when you editing, I think is a really great place for this, because you could give the same thing to two editors, and if one really knows their craft and knows all the little tricks and stuff, you're going to find those little things add polish, and then they add up, and then eventually that final video just presents a lot better, even if it's just the technical edit side of it, not just telling story or arranging clips or whatnot, but the like, just as a technician editing. And then there's, of course, you add that on the storytelling, and it's like, not all editors are storytellers, not all DPs or lighting experts or gaffers or whatnot are focusing on the storytelling part of it. They're trying to do their technical option or what have you. So it's great to be able to go and like not only learn it well and understand it, but to have, experience and, actions to apply to making your stuff better. I mean, if you can't analyze why your thing isn't as good as it could be, you're never going to get to that next step. So.
Yeah. Especially like with editing too, a lot of the things I think that come off to the viewer, because editing is so much involved in removing stuff and taking stuff away and cutting down clips. So like something I talk about on my channel is like something you won't even see the work of is like choosing which clips. Like, let's say you had a batch of 100 different shots and scenes, and so the editor spent all this time choosing like the 5 or 6 ones to use, but you as the viewer didn't see like the 90 other ones that didn't get used. So there's all that work there that is invisible in a way.
I always found it difficult when I made TV commercials for a long time, and you'd get done with the edit, you'd give it to the client, and a lot of times in this situation, the client would also be the person that was, the on-camera personality of a small business or something, and they don't like the take that you used, and they go, "Is there a better take?" And it's like, I hope I presented you the best take. I hope you understand that my goal is to give you the best one first. And so it's like, well, I can show you the other ones. And usually by showing the other ones, they go, oh yeah, you're right. And if you can't live with it, okay, you reshoot, that's fine. But making sure to go through all of the shots. I mean, you could do a script and, have someone just go through the lines and everything and put something together, but it wouldn't be very dynamic. An editor is paying more attention to, even the movement. Oh, he moves to the right and my next shot doesn't follow with that. I'm gonna have to use a different take because those two together don't work, even though individually they're the best take of those. They just don't work together. Okay, how am I gonna do this? Or I love the idea when, a story has to change. Say a scene down the line has to get cut. So the reference to that or whatever needs to be taken away. The puzzle that you end up having of like, okay, now how do I skip this scene that was meant to be and is part of the whole story without making the viewer aware that there's a hole missing that we originally designed that they're not missing at all, and that it's seamless to the viewer. I don't think anybody would ever enjoy entertainment if they actually had to sit through the choosing of clips and whatnot. I don't think many people have the patience. That's why editors are unique in that you can sit there and watch the same thing over and over and over again and be looking for something different. Meanwhile, someone around you might be like, could you just knock it off? Stop playing that same clip over and over. Well, I'm really getting it right, but it's really that the editor's choice is really a really important thing. We were talking to, was it Sven Papas or Sven, that he was talking about that he gets a script from his from the director that gave him the content, and here's all the assets and whatnot. And he looks at the script. Okay, he gets it. Then he throws it away and then makes the story as he'd like. And I'm like, man, that's what a great way, have people trust you that that's what you're going to do. And that, they know they're going to get something better out of it. But it's also somewhat, like daring and risky, that's quite a risk because you could spend a bunch more time giving this thing and be like, dude, I gave you a roadmap and a script. Why didn't you follow that? And it's like, well, but it's better now. And having to justify that. And usually, it speaks for itself, but that can be a difficult thing. So for you, when you're making your content, how do you come up with ideas for your next video, what you're going to be teaching in tutorials? Is it like through your own, you struggle with this thing, okay, I'm going to master it and show it? Are you doing like going on Google Trends and just seeing what people are searching for? What really gets you to make your next video, and like what makes the decision on the content?
Sure. So it started out, I started out teaching Photoshop stuff just because I enjoyed making videos, and I was making all these videos on YouTube that involved copyrighted music and music video related stuff. I was just talking about songs that I liked and stuff. So that wasn't working. So I thought, all right, I like making videos and sharing them on YouTube, but I need something safer. So I thought, I saw that people enjoyed learning Photoshop and this type of stuff. So I thought, well, I'm pretty good at Photoshop. That would be fun. I could make videos showing how to do stuff in Photoshop. And so I did that at first. I would just come up with cool designs and turning someone into a comic book look or a pop art style. And fast forward hundreds and hundreds of videos, it fluctuates between one, stuff that I'm working on personally. So if I'm working on something and then I come up with a cool trick, I will be like, oh, that would be a cool thing to share on how I did that. For example, a video idea that I have this week that I want to do is how to animate screenshots in videos better. Because so many times, let's say if someone's selling something on Amazon and they want to show the product reviews, or there's so many times where you want to involve a screenshot of something. And this is something that I was personally doing for some of my own products. But there's little tricks that we can do, applying blurs and drop shadows to the background, or adding perspective, or making it animate in. So in that case, that's something that I personally was doing in my edit that I thought I'd share that would help someone else. But then also, as someone who is now serving a larger community of people that want to learn editing, I also try to be more methodical. I have a notes app, and I think okay, what are all of the things that you should learn as a beginner editor or on? So how to like talk about sequence sizes, how to export, all of the toolbar explained. I mean, at this point, I've explained like every single effect and every single tool and like all the shortcuts and all different things, and basically all of the how to use the software. And sometimes I also do look up like trending questions. And also at this point, I have lots of people asking me questions and emailing me. So many times on Instagram, I'll have someone just send me something and be like, hey, how did they do this? And I'll say, oh, that's just like a gradient map, or that's just a tint. And then I'll think, well, why don't I just make a video that will maybe more people would want to see that. So yeah, I have unlimited ideas, I feel like at this point, but not unlimited time.
Yeah, it seems so difficult sometimes when you're making so much content, when you make the volume of like you're saying, I have an explainer for every tool. It's like, how many times can I go to the well and slice this pie up? And it sounds to me that sounds like you aren't really burdened by that, which is great. But that also you're getting outside ideas, which that's really nice too, because it's also, someone's actually looking for that. And they probably didn't find an answer. So it's probably there isn't a video out there or content to explain how to do that. So you're able to make that and fill that need.
Yeah. The other thing I want to do that I haven't even tapped into is like, since I am so much more on the digital side, like I've explained all the tools and I've explained all the effects and I've done cool creative effects. There's stuff that people like more, like people love the effects and transitions, but I also want to get more into, like, I think it's cool what we were talking about is, although from the outside, it may just look like, oh, you make videos. From the inside, it's like, oh, well, there's storytelling, there's shot selection, there's color grading, there's lighting, there's this, there's that. So like there actually is so much different areas of specialization. And the next things that I want to get into are more like philosophical aspects of editing, like you're saying, like one, I want to involve film and more, like showing how actual filmmakers, like maybe just focusing in on one scene of a movie that's cut really well and getting more like into why this scene works, like from the head movement of the actors or why they chose to cut it a certain way. And I feel like that's a whole nother area that I haven't even scratched the surface of, and then I do a lot of Premiere, but there's After Effects has tons of stuff that I haven't even fully scratched the surface of. I've only done like less than 100 videos there. So yeah, I definitely keep myself busy. I've got my own podcast too, where I want to interview other creators and do stuff like this. So it's kind of amazing how much there is to talk about without having to, I don't want to just be repeating the same, like how to export a video over and over and over.
At VideoMaker, we have the same kind of thing where, we divide these two ideas between what we call it this. I think this is actually the real word for it in instructional design terms, but, conceptual teaching versus procedural teaching. So, procedural would be like click file, go down to the save button and type in the file that you want to save and now click the save button. Like that's procedural. And a lot of tutorials follow the procedural format, right? That's like, what buttons do you click and where is things and, how do you move things across the screen or whatever. And conceptual would be things like film theory and montage theory and, the Kuleshov effect and all these other kinds of things. The challenge, of course, with those kinds of conceptual pieces of content is finding the reader, or in your case, the viewer for them, in the sense that, a lot of people will look up something procedural because they have an immediate problem they need to solve, and they type in like, how do I use Gaussian blur or whatever it is, right? Whatever the thing is, they punch that in and they get to it. Not many people put in like, how do I use the Kuleshov effect, in my next video?
Yeah.
Like, they just don't know what they don't know, right? But at the same time, those theoretical concepts are core to storytelling, and it's really important that people learn that kind of stuff. So it's a challenge, I guess, as someone who is creating content where you're making money by like the volume of people viewing it, to try to get them to consume this content they really need to consume but don't know that they need it.
Yeah, and I also like to stick to. I don't like to talk about things that I am not an expert at too. Like I won't pretend to tell someone how to be a better cinematographer or something. Like I can tell you exactly everything in the software procedurally and even get into like some more conceptual things. But I'm also studying now. Like I'm kind of putting myself through my own little film school. I ordered like a dozen books. I mean, I've been trying to watch like the greatest movies of all time, and like I'm doing a little bit of my own studying on the side constantly. So like while I am teaching what I know, but I'm also learning, and then I hope to be able to have something worthwhile to say. And the nice thing is once you do build up like a subscriber base, while most people are just finding me for like resourceful reasons, then you do have a kind of a community and audience that builds up where I can put out something more conceptual and they'll click it because they say, oh, what did Justin put up today? Maybe a couple thousand people might still be interested in like just seeing what's new because I've helped them before. So YouTube is changing, I think, in the way that they suggest stuff, and I think it's like you'll stumble upon stuff that is relevant to what you've been watching. So hopefully, and the other thing I'll say is like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but it seems like video editing, I've kind of been at the right place at the right time. Like it's like an explosion of people that want to learn this stuff and an explosion of people making videos. So almost like a gold rush of like everybody wants to make videos now.
You know, I think that's like, there's just like a constant surge of people. Like, I don't know about you, Chris, but I was feeling the same thing back in the 90s, you know, when it's like, oh, anyone can get Premiere now. And
now I can use a computer to do it, you know, or now I don't have to use tape. I can just pull the data right off, and everybody's going to be doing this.
Yeah. And then YouTube, the next decade, it's like, holy cow, I can put my stuff up on anyone in the world can see it. So I got to learn how to do that. There's just like this, always a new push, a new wave of people to try to do something new. And now it's like, holy cow, I can do lots of amazing things on my mobile device. Like I don't even need to buy anything. I have this stuff already. And so people are always looking for this new education and trying to figure out how they can be better communicators. So Justin, I want to ask you about some of the more divergent topics that are on your YouTube channel and kind of the maybe the YouTube strategy behind those. But before we get to it, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Videomaker has been the go-to website for video production professionals and enthusiasts since 1986. There's a reason a quarter of our audience has been following us for more than 10 years. Simply put, our content makes our audience better at producing video. For whatever level you're at, we have the content to get the quality of work where you want it to be. Nobody knows this better than our Videomaker Plus members. With exclusive offers and access to courses, webinars, back issues, and the digital magazine, they're able to stay up on the top of their production game. So now we want our podcast listeners to get in on the exclusive access. For a limited time only, we're offering a $100 discount to our Professional Plus annual membership. That's 42% off the normal price. To claim this exclusive deal, go to videomaker.com/2020plus. That's videomaker.com/2020plus. PLUS, not the symbol. It only takes a minute to sign up and you'll get immediate, unrestricted access to all of our content. Don't wait, this offer will not be around for long and you just can't ignore the benefits. That's $100 you can save that can go straight to new gear, software, accessories, whatever you want for your production setup. Don't wait, this offer won't be around for long. Once again, claim your exclusive offer now at videomaker.com/2020plus. Okay, and we're back. So Justin, you have a number of videos on your channel that are just like, I would call them divergent from your main topic, right? Which is post-production tutorials or Photoshop tutorials. And in particular, I was drawn by these videos that you have, which is like a book review series where you like talk a lot about philosophy and you're like reviewing Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, right? Like what was your mindset when you decided to do this kind of new thing and merge it and do it on your main channel?
So my channel is just my name, Justin Odisho. And although I understand that, 80% of people are there to learn a software thing. I did ultimately start the channel because I enjoy posting videos. And although it has become my business, I do think it's not too harmful to experiment like with 10-20% of the time with other things. So one big hobby is reading and books that I enjoy. And it is something where I could see in the potential of future, like if I had a series that I could constantly do of reviewing books, it's like an enjoyable hobby. Whereas like sometimes teaching the software starts to feel like a job after a while. It's something that I can do to continue enjoying the hobby. And I do just have all these unshared thoughts that I know perhaps the majority of people aren't there for, but maybe if it helps out a couple hundred, couple thousand people. And I mean, strategy wise, like it's probably harmful for my channel, but it could potentially be like a seed that attracts a different audience. You know, there's only so many people that want to learn video editing, right? Perhaps, I don't know how many users there are of Adobe software, but maybe it's a couple million or something, or like a couple million diehard people. So, you know, a channel just teaching Photoshop will probably be capped at 1 to 2 million subscribers in 2020. I don't think there really is anyone bigger than that. And if you want to get bigger than that, you do have to get a little divergent, maybe do some more vlogging or lifestyle stuff and people get to know your personality. But yeah, it's just something I do for me kind of. And it's really enjoyable when I get a message about someone's like, hey, I read that book too. Have you? Because ultimately, social media is also a great way to connect with people. And you don't want to build an audience that you don't like. Like, just like if I built an audience around, I've noticed that people, I might be going off on a tangent here, but like I've noticed people will, or even myself, like you'll build an audience just like hammering out Photoshop tutorials, and then you don't really care about Photoshop anymore, and then everyone's like only likes you for Photoshop, and you just feel this disconnect with your audience, and it takes the fun out of it almost.
You know, I was thinking,
was a long answer, but
yeah, well, I think you know, you're a YouTuber, you're obviously an editor, but you're also a teacher, right? You know, I mean, you're teaching people stuff. And I think, I mean, I've had plenty of teachers that, you know, until they have their curriculum down and stuff, they're learning just ahead of their students, right? So the idea of studying things that are emerging or whatever is just kind of part of the job. But of course you get to the thing there. But I know that I've had plenty of great experiences with teachers and learned stuff from them that wasn't the subject that they were teaching, you know. And so I think it's neat to have that personal side of it, of like, you know, studying philosophy or whatever else, because, you know, likely you're similar to others that are looking for that information, right? You know, I mean, like you're teaching people how to do something. Those people want to know how to do it. Likely, even just that connection means you're similar, or you know, there's similar career paths. So interests and those kinds of things can also, you know, be just as interesting to those, you know, as far as community goes. I mean, otherwise you're probably just dealing SEO and just search, you know, people searching for those things. And if there's subjects that people want to see, then you'll get viewers, and maybe that's a net to throw out to new people or whatnot. But I think, you know, the idea of trying to be interesting amongst as many videos as you've made, and changing it up so that it's fresh for you, I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know from time to time, I just not into the subject matter I'm making something about. And it's like, I just got to get through this so I can get to something that I do. And I'm sure that video is affected from that. But you know, the nice thing is for you especially, is you're on to the next one already. So there's not a lot of dwelling on what you have. Has there been any content that you made that you got response that, you know, it just worked a lot better than normal, that was outside of what you normally do, and you were surprised by?
Yeah, you made a lot of good points about the similar interest thing. Like, it's true. And like with some of the, like also with reading just various topics, like, you know, I'll read a philosophy book and it'll be like something all abstract, like take away what is unneeded or like whatever. And I'm like, oh, that actually relates to video editing too. Like, you know, totally. It's the same thing. So there's interesting, fun ways you can try to combine them. But, you know, for example, I made a video about some of my book collection, or like my bookshelf. It was just quarantine and I was really bored, and I had been watching those kind of videos, and that video did pretty well. It's still doing pretty well. It's got like 20,000 views or something and a pretty high watch time, more so than some of the editing related stuff that I was doing. So YouTube's algorithm, sometimes it works. It just like puts your video to the right people, even if it's not your subscribers. And that's been a fun video because it surprisingly did pretty good. And it's also allowed me to engage with a new subset of people because, you know, the editing demographic is a certain type of person, but we all have different sides to us. And like, I also want to talk to someone who's a book nerd and get to know those type of people too. But like the thing you said too earlier about how you thought, you know, back in the 90s, everyone could get Premiere and then it keeps evolving, and how video is a language. Like I was reading a book on the history of photography, and that's really interesting too. All these conceptual things are really interesting to me because in reality, we like to think of editing as like this really digital thing. It's actually pretty analog. Like photography was, I forgot who the first person was, but you know, they exposed, like they just left the light on this piece of metal or something and the chemical like burned the image into it. And then they developed it more and more. And it's become so abstract now to where we just have our phone and we don't know how it works. But technically it is all analog. It physically exists in the real world. And it's almost the most, it's one of the most worldwide universal languages there is video, photo, not necessarily, but like communicating through image, whether that's like a picture, video, photo. Nowadays, it's so high tech that I think we all should be more, or I think it would benefit anyone to be more fluent in this language. And so whether that's learning procedural or conceptual things, I think anyone would be better off being able to communicate better through video.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like Mike's having a little mic problem. Mike and his mic. Did it not go all the way in? Interesting. While you're...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Everything. Yeah. Oh, did you say something?
No, my microphone plug just like fell right out.
The ghost in the building pulled out the plug.
Yeah. Just sort of touching on philosophy really quick though, like it seems like there actually is a pretty good amount of crossover or potential crossover between filmmaking and philosophy, obviously, right? Like you write, or you make a bunch of videos about philosophy books. And you're also saying that, you'd like to explore some of the theoretical or conceptual sides of filmmaking and storytelling. But, we can look at the history of philosophy and see that, a lot of philosophical ideas came out in literature, like fiction, right? Like the modern example of this is Ayn Rand and objectivism, right? And we're in the early days still, even though it's been 120 years of film. And I think that you can probably, if you're developing the content around film concepts, film theory, and maybe film history, there's going to be a bunch of examples where film history and philosophy kind of cross over. And could be some interesting video topics buried in there, which could appeal to people who are interested in video editing, but who want a little bit more deeper content about philosophy and expressing complex ideas in an audiovisual medium.
Yeah, the other thing too, like you said, is like most films were a book, or like most scripts were written first, and so it seems far-fetched, like why are you reviewing books and I came here for video editing, but in a way they're pretty actually linked. Like most books become movies. Like there's not just, I don't know the number, but I'm sure it's like over half films that we know were originally books or adapted from a book.
Yeah, tons of adaptations for sure.
I always think that a challenge to your process, a challenge to your knowledge makes good art. So, when people are challenged with philosophy, that good art can be gotten from that challenge can cause a perspective change to go, oh, this is how I can communicate this. And I think, as we have, it's a communicative medium, but and there's a written language, there's a language already written for film and whatnot, but there's still like a personal voyage, I guess, for every individual of like how they're going to use that tool of communication to communicate or what they're going to communicate. And I think that a lot of, just like tortured souls make good art. When you're struggling with, or you're trying to grapple with knowledge or understanding, that it will be expressed through the things you are able to express with. And in our case, it might be a camera, might be a computer, might be an editing, might be a YouTube video. But that challenge is, I think, really important for people's personal growth, just in the way of like, if your perspective doesn't change throughout your life, likely you had a dull life. But you know, that challenge hopefully will get better understanding, and that better understanding will make you make better content. I think, you know, not just in the way of like, if your content's a video, but the content might be, some kind of bill you're writing, or underwriting of a tax or so. I don't know. This kind of creative challenge of knowledge, I think, can be applied to well more than just the communicative medium of film. And I think that challenge to us personally, regardless if we're applying it to film, can really, I hope, expand someone's ability to make fine art.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like, although I'm taking advantage of everyone wants to learn this software now, and the procedural stuff truly is I mean, it's definitely going to be obsolete in like 10 years. So, you know, we're not looking up Photoshop 1 tutorials anymore.
Yeah.
The stuff that's really going to last is the conceptual stuff. Like, ever since I learned editing, I learned in Sony Vegas, like, you know, 10 years ago. And, you know, the stuff that I've needed throughout the years, I never really, it's like riding a bike. Like, oh, okay, you learn how to cut, you learn how to arrange, you learn how to, this stuff that is lasted decades and decades, like whether you're arranging via cutting physical film strips and arranging, like these are the things that are actually more evergreen and permanent. And the procedural stuff is bound to change from update to update. And so it's almost kind of, I should take a little bit priority to mix that in so that my entire catalog of content doesn't all expire in 5 years, you know?
Yeah, well, look at Vegas. It's not even owned by Sony anymore, right? So things change.
I don't even know what's going on in Vegas anymore.
Yeah, totally right. But the thing is I think editing is somewhat ubiquitous across platforms now. Luckily, not anyone's trying to do it 100 ways out. And I think like Apple learned the hardest rule of like, we're going to change how editing goes. And then everybody's like, see ya. But then again, you come back to it and there's people now that are like, no, we'll argue with you. Final Cut is the way to get it done. But regardless, a cut's a cut, a montage is a montage, regardless of the tool you use to make it. And those things, those are evergreen, but even if you teach those concepts, like I'm going to teach editing, the concepts of a montage, but I'm going to use, Premiere. And let's say it's like 2 versions ago, it already looks old. Like it doesn't have dark mode, so it's not going to, the colors aren't the same. So like things start to get grungy pretty quick, especially I think actually Adobe, because of their subscription base, they want to make their stuff look and feel different every time they come out with something, because they need to justify continuing to pay that monthly bill. So I think that can be tricky, but we've had a lot of stuff that is, we're teaching conceptual stuff on, camcorder, and the information's still great. It's still really great to apply, but you're probably not shooting on a camcorder anymore.
Yeah. Videos do tend to get crusty over time, just from like, the technology is clearly outdated, even though the concepts are still good. Or, even things like the clothes that people are wearing and their haircut is like outdated. After, you might not have to remake it every 5 years, but probably every 10 years,
Yeah. And that gets into like also never running out of stuff. Like whether I ran out of ideas or not, I'm probably going to have to reteach a whole new batch of people. And on a software, it helps to just have an update. Like, I know I already showed you how to export a couple years ago, but let's just do it in this updated like 2020 version. But, ultimately I'm not trying to like, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years, but I don't know if I'm going to be doing this one thing forever. I mean, I've already been doing YouTube stuff for like over 10 years, and I'm pretty young still, but who knows where technology is going to go, and I don't know.
What
It's
opportunities
interesting.
are going to come your way because of what you're doing now? I mean, just what we're doing now hopefully paves the road for our future, regardless of what the future holds.
Also, your interests change, I mean, you hope as you're building a career that as your interests change, your skills are developing so that you can make a, elegant transition from one field to another, and those skills will transfer over. But it happens to everyone. Like, oftentimes, I actually heard an NPR story about this. I think it was NPR, where people like tried to imagine how much they had changed in the last 10 years, and most people look back on themselves from 10 years ago and think that's a different person. I'm a totally different person now than I was then. And so the best you can hope for, I think, as you're growing your career is first to expect those big changes, but also plan for them and develop yourself in a way that you're prepared to make a change if you need to.
There's one other part of that story. I heard the same one, is that you think, 10 years ago, I've changed so much. Why wouldn't your expectations be for 10 years from now to have that much change as well?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, we think we're going to stay steady looking into the future, but we look behind us and see so much change. Why wouldn't you expect just as much change? And it surely is going to be. Surely you're going to have just as much challenge to life. They're not going to be the same kind of challenges. Hopefully you're not continuing to struggle with the same thing over and over and over again. But that, as we grow, those challenges become easier to deal with and whatnot. I was thinking about, the idea of your YouTube channel and wanting to to make sure to diversify enough of stuff so that you can kind of hedge growth, and you can continue to do that. And I think of gaming channels of getting stuck on a game. If you're now given, like, Minecraft's a bad example because it's been popular like 4 different times now. But if you're playing Halo or some kind of, I don't even know if Halo ever made it on YouTube, but that stuff's changing, and it's like, well, the audience might be big today for that thing because that's the hot thing, but no one's playing that game in a year, so you better change or keep up. Otherwise, you're just not going to keep on hitting. Luckily, I don't think that, I imagine if you change to like different editing platforms, maybe that would be somewhat similar to it. But I think just the content variety is probably going to help you, hedge that roadblock of growth in whatever direction you're going.
It's all like, from a business side of things, it all can get very tricky to think about, and this is a whole nother skill. Funny enough, I actually started the games I was playing was the Halo games. That's like how I got into all of this.
Last time I played Halo was on like the Xbox One.
The first Xbox?
Yeah, not the Xbox One, the Xbox original, the black one.
But I think some things do change. I think if we go a little bit upstream, the things that I think there are things that I think stay the same. So like, I have always enjoyed like making and sharing stuff, and that's just evolved, and I've found a way to make it make sense in a business wise way. But I also feel like, as an editor, or if you are into this thing of editing, there's probably just other things about you that, like, the skill of editing is not always necessarily a technical one. For example, one funny tweet I did was like, cleaning your room is editing. Like, it is like organizing, editing is not this abstract digital thing always. Like, there was always need for editing, whether that's in a museum, the person that curates the art, interior designer, like the person who selects wardrobe on a set, or there's all these different things that I think are more life lasting. Like, I think I'll always enjoy creating and sharing stuff, and I'll always have like a teaching bone in me, or like something like that. So whether it evolves from, now I'm really into books and I want to, teach these ideas, or, I'll always have those more human interests. Like, these are human nature type of things, like the need, the want to communicate, and the want to self-educate in these different, like, you can go back thousands of years and people were writing plays or like thinking about the same topics. So some things changed technically and software wise, but I think it's good to keep in mind the things that stay the same century and what's the word for 1,000 years?
Millennia.
Eon.
Millennium.
Millennia.
Well, I practiced
centuries and millennium.
I practiced my editing skills this morning when I chose a shirt.
Oh, yeah, there you go. True.
This is really basic editing.
Well, it's like one of the only things that we do that isn't editing is thinking, I guess, right? But even speaking is a form of editing because you're theoretically choosing. Well, you're not necessarily choosing what to say. A lot of times you speak and it just sort of is a stream of consciousness. But often you're holding back feelings or thoughts and not speaking them out loud. So, the editing is the art of removing things, right, essentially, and cutting things down to their essence. So anytime you're doing any kind of selective removal or omission, it's a form of editing, I guess. Maybe there's like an assumption or that editing involves communication specifically. But I guess, putting on your shirt in the morning is a form of communication.
Yeah, totally. I like Dr. Pepper. That's what it says on my shirt.
Well, like book editors, like even now, like that's a job. Like send it to my editor. They make sure all the typos are gone, or like tell me to change this paragraph over there. Like, if computers all blow up and like we all got to find different jobs as editors, like I think the skills are still translatable to a lot of things. It
absolutely is. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of competition in the written word editing if all the computers blow up. But yeah, I mean, editing is an absolutely essential process of communication. Like you could take the greatest writer in the world and take away their editor and just publish their unedited work, and it's probably not going to be that great. I mean, at least compared to what it is when it is edited. Like you said with film editing, it's invisible. Like it's like a cliche now to say that the best editing is invisible editing, but it truly is. Like the art of removal and omission, you don't really see. You just see a well-told story. And the same thing happens with novels or online articles or any form of communication.
I read an article about Stephen King, and he said, when my editor retires, I'm retiring. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as someone that writes words and has it edited, it is great to have an editor that knows what they're doing. And I think the same thing's true if that's handing over assets to be video edited or not, is that thoughtfulness and, I mean, what we think about it with Haley, she's our managing editor, and she's not super well versed in video editing. And when I first brought it to her, I'm like, but you edit words all the time. This is the same kind of thing. It's just I'm going to be speaking it, and you're going to be cutting me out. Obviously you can't cut every other word out like you might on a really bad, poorly written paragraph.
Or change words.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of jump cuts. Yeah, exactly. But, a similar skill set. And I think the same kind of satisfaction comes from it. Like I know Haley really enjoys making something better just from her skill of doing that, and I know that finishing that is the same kind of experience I have when it's like, okay, I have all these assets, I got to make this into something that communicates something and is something someone wants to view, not just make something, and that's a challenge, and that challenge is a fun treasure hunt. Sometimes it's a fun journey and exploration that will take you a lot of different places, and it's great to be able to have the freedom to go and move and be able to come up with creative ideas of how to tackle those things, because 5 different people can tackle the same problem and all have a different solution when it comes to editing, which is exciting because it's so subjective in that way that it is an art, that it has to be our applied knowledge and the best hope out of that.
So Justin, we're coming up on time, but I want to make sure we ask you about your one secret here. So if you had one secret to give our listeners about how they could be better editors, what would that one secret be?
Sure. So I guess it's not really secret. All right, it's super secret. But the secret, I think, is because I get a lot of questions, people asking me like, what should I learn this? Or like, what about this? What about that? And the best kind of educational route I've found for people to become better, I tell them like, just try to make a project from start to finish. And it's kind of like that saying, like, we'll cross those bridges when we get there. in making a project from start to finish, you don't worry about all these like things that never come up. You physically will start, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh wait, like I need to learn how do I even get the footage on the computer? Oh, I gotta learn about SD cards. I gotta learn about hard drives. Then you get the footage in, then you're like, okay, now I gotta learn how to start a project. Now I gotta learn how to start a sequence. And it all kind of unfolds naturally. And then, you like if you get the final project from start to finish uploaded onto a platform like YouTube or share it with a friend or something, in that process, you will have had to learn the essentials like how to start a project, how to import media, how to arrange and cut, and then how to export and how to share. So, once you have that skeleton down, then you can kind of, exercise and supplement it with all the additional knowledge. But it's much better way to learn through actually like seeing what you need, bare essentials, rather than just like philosophizing on the sideline about like what's the good camera and like how long should it be? So yeah, that's my one secret, is actually just try to make a project from start to finish if you're in that stage, and you'll be better set for learning.
I think that's also really great for our time right now. Like if you want to research something, Google it. And there are no roadblocks in your journey to knowledge, right? So you could go through that whole edit, and every time, how do I input footage into Premiere? Cool. You're going to find a video, you're going to find 100 videos for that. But, all the way through, you're going to be able to find those answers. There's no reason to fret that you're not going to get you're not going to find that resource of how to do it. So you can really relax and know that, well, I'll just keep on coming up with questions. I'll get them answered, and I can keep on pushing through. That's a fun edit, by the way. I love the idea of like, I'm making something, and I'm just going to let the project start making itself. I've had to it's easier when you're making something short form. So making a commercial that has, at most 7 shots in it, it's not terribly hard to put something together that will work. But that, the idea of having to figure out what you're doing as you're doing it will also, I think, really hammer that knowledge into you, because not only are you learning it, you're applying it immediately. And that's pretty fantastic. That's like, a college class. Why do you have a lab? So you can apply the knowledge that you're learning in lecture. And this is just all in one. And I think that's some great advice.
It reminds me.
Google. Like that's, I couldn't have put it more succinctly. Like if you just type it into Google, 99% of the time, you'll get the answer.
Yeah. I don't want to insult any of our audience, but I've had a lot of times I'm always, checking the comments and stuff. And so many of the questions that are there, I want to respond to, have you Googled this yet? Yeah. Because it's a great question, not related to the video, but you probably ought to Google it.
You gotta point them towards, let me Google that for you. You've seen that site?
I always find that site like too rude to ever send to someone. Yeah. Like I feel like if you're gonna ask someone like I love answering questions. Yeah. So like if you're gonna ask me something, say like, hey, like ask me something like, what are your favorite films, or like something where it's not on Google, like, rather than like, how do you start a new project, or if it's like a really specific problem. Like there's times when you need to ask personal questions, and there's times where it'll just save you time to just type it into Google or YouTube and save you time, not even the other person.
Yeah, totally. Like you spent the time to comment on this. You could have used that same energy to Google it, and then you probably would have the answer instead of waiting for me to answer to you. When you with just, a snarky remark,
when you just type it into to a comment field, though, it's like you're almost anticipating like this genie effect, where I'm going to ask, and the genie will deliver the answer for me, and I don't have to look at websites and read things. Of course.
Well, I think we also have to have some humility in that, when someone is asking you something like that on your YouTube channel, you're an expert. They want expert advice, right. And trusting Google for expert advice doesn't always turn out well.
That's right. You're right. That's definitely hit or miss.
I can Google stuff about, my sickness, but it's going to tell me I have Rona every time.
Yeah. or cancer.
Yeah, cancer. Yeah.
Cancer is always the answer to
my dog's going to die or something. I'm like, damn it, I'm feeling bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really easy to reach on like Instagram, and I love all the questions, so I try to answer. I don't know the answer to all of them though. Like sometimes someone will say, what is happening in this really like specific error code? I just don't know sometimes, but I try to answer everything that I do know.
I think that's wisdom that says, I'm willing to say I don't know. I think that's actually a place from knowledge that someone would say that.
If it's public, though, it can be a fun way to make yourself seem a lot smarter than you really are, right? Like they give you a difficult question, you Google it, and you return the answer. And they're like, wow,
You're king. I love it.
Okay, Justin. Well, hey, we're at our time, so thanks for giving us some time today. It was a really interesting conversation.
Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, I had fun having the conversation, a lot of interesting topics.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Big thanks to Justin Odisho for joining us. You can check out his YouTube channel at youtube.com/JustinOdishoTV or go to justinodisho.com, and links to those are in the description. You can go straight there. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, we'd love it if you went to iTunes and gave us a 5-star review. It's really helpful for podcasts like ours. We really enjoy reading new reviews as they go up. For Chris Monlux and everyone here at Videomaker, I've been Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker podcast. We'll catch you next time.